Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across this great state of Michigan. And I am so glad to be with you here from this studio. It feels good. Feels good to be back. I think I got my mojo back. I think I'm ready to rock. And I hope you are as well. So what are we talking about this week? First thing is we've got to talk about the weather, right? At least the last few days, opening weekend. As I'm here in the studio, the weather forecast for this weekend doesn't look real cold yet. I don't see any snow. Some folks were telling me that the extended forecast calls for a little snow next week. We shall see. I know that opening day when I was out there, I was all set. You know, opening day of firearm season in Michigan, you're like, okay, we have these traditions. We dress really warm. I've got my heater with me in case I need it. I looked at that in the back of the truck and I said, I'm not even taking you with me. I don't need you. In fact, I was probably overdressed a little bit for opening day. Opening day. I've rekindled my joy of deer hunting in Michigan because I was able to mentally compartmentalize some things. I took the business side of hunting. I took the political side of hunting. I took the social media side of hunting, and I put it all over in one side, right? I still have to deal with that because that's basically what I do for a living, from a business perspective. But then I took the other side of it. I took the positive side. I took the family side of it. I took the tradition side of it. And that's what I put first and foremost and at the front of things. And when I was able to do that, my joy for deer hunting returned. The passion will never be what it was before, but that's okay. But the joy for deer hunting is back. I was out there opening morning with my son James, my grandson Trent, and my granddaughter Addison. And it was so enjoyable, you know, just to be back right after having some health problems here a few weeks ago. Didn't even know if I was going to be able to be in the blind. James says, we're going to get you out there. And because that time I was still dealing with some physical issues, and it probably wasn't a great idea for me to be walking out to the blind in the dark, he brought the quad out. He brought his quad out to our property. He set me on the back of the quad, and he drove me out to the blind. Talk about feeling like a helpless old man. But that's what had to be done at the time. So I was out there. There was a north wind that morning. So I was on the south end of a big food plot that I shot a doe out of a few weeks ago now. My grandson Trent was on the northwest corner of the property. My granddaughter Addison was on the northeast corner of the property, and James was set up a few hundred yards away from me, kind of in the middle of the property. And it was wonderful to be out there. Didn't hear a lot of shots. I didn't even see a deer. I'll cut to the chase. I hunted basically all day opening day, and then I hunted Saturday afternoon again with Trent Never saw a deer. Not a buck, not a doe, not a fawn, not a nothing. It didn't matter. I didn't care. I had venison in the freezer from the doe that I had shot in earlier during bow season. And for me, it was all about the tradition of being out there. And that's why I was there. And it was wonderful. I didn't care that I didn't see a deer. Because at that point, what really mattered was somebody else in the family group seeing a buck and shooting a buck. Addison had already shot a buck earlier with a bow. My son James shot a buck down in Illinois. Trent was the only one who hadn't connected yet. So we were all kind of pulling for Trent. And about, what time was it? I don't remember. A couple hours into opening morning, we hear the shot. And I'm thinking, that's got to be Trent. A couple minutes later, and I think I texted. We had a family text going on. I said, that had to be Trent. Trent texted back, yep, that was me. He had shot a nice 7-point, real tall 7-point that came into, and he told me, he rode out with me that morning, and he said, you know what? Now that it's gun season and I have a gun in my hands, I bet if I see a buck, it's going to walk in bow range. And it did. And Trent shot him and put him down. Real nice buck. And I was able to get, so James and Trent dragged him out to the road. We were able to throw him in the back of the truck, and they took care of him. I wasn't much help, but I was there for moral support, and I was there. And I was there for pictures. So I got a real nice picture, some real nice pictures of Trent behind that buck with a smile on his face. I put the camera, which is my phone, on a backpack, just kind of set it up there and angled it towards the deer and got the rest of us behind the deer. Got a nice picture there. We took him off to be processed, took a little lunch break, came back. And when we came back in the afternoon, I did my usual opening day tradition. And that is a picture of all of us there with our rifles over our shoulders and blaze orange, smiling at the camera for opening day. And it was like, this is what it's all about. And I was able to rekindle the joy, the love for deer hunting, because I put the rest of it aside and I said, this is why we're out here. And it was beautiful and it was wonderful. And I enjoyed it. And in the picture I took of Trent, we made sure to tuck the deer's tongue back in his mouth. This is something I'm always preaching about. I want to see your pictures. And I want you, here's how you get the pictures to me, right? Don't send them to me in a social media message. Don't send them to me in a Facebook message. If you have my cell number, you can text them. But if you don't have my cell number, send them to me in an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, and that way I can post them. I was saying before the show here in our Behind the Mic live stream, I have a new tool to work with, though. Even if you kind of forget and you leave the animal's tongue hanging out of his mouth, and I've seen so many beautiful deer pictures ruined because the tongue was hanging out the side of the animal's mouth like a cartoon, I can now fix that. I have the tool to do that. Apple kind of did an update with their most recent operating system, yada, yada, yada. And one of the things I can do is if you forget, because I know you wouldn't intentionally do this, if you forget and send me a picture with the deer's tongue hanging out of its mouth, I can go click, click, click. I can make a little circle around that thing. I can hit erase, and it'll erase it. It'll make it go away. I don't think anything has made me happier in a long time. Well, the fact that I'm still here. Because of medical technology and God's grace. Okay, what else is going on? Saginaw Bay walleye fishing is on fire. Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charter sent me a picture, said, Mike, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. You still have an open invitation on my boat. Here's what's going on out there. And he sent me a picture of literally a boatload full of fish. The biggest one was like 7 pounds, 26 inches, a beautiful fish. That's going on out there. What else? Ham for the holidays. We are kicking that back off. we have kicked it back off. So if you turn into our Wednesday Night Live now through the first of the year, we are giving away a Michigan brand ham for the holidays, courtesy of the folks at Michigan Brand Meats. That is so generous. I appreciate that so much. And all you have to do is tune in and make a comment about why you want to win a Michigan brand ham for the holidays. There will be a Michigan brand. Is that next week already? It is. Thanksgiving coming up. There will be a turkey in the Avery oven, and there will be a Michigan brand ham in the Avery oven for Thanksgiving as well. Let me tell you who's coming up here after the break. In fact, in this week's show. After the break, speaking of Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand, he will join me to talk about his deer hunting progress, success or not, I don't know. A little bit about what's going on at Michigan Brand and his ham for the holiday giveaways as well. Then Mr. Angler Quest, Brad Dupuie, but we're talking about deer hunting and a wonderful hunt he had with his son Ethan. Ethan is in a wheelchair, and they were able to take advantage of a special hunt at the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge. More on that. In our second hour, I'm going to take most of the hour and talk with Chad Stewart from the DNR about deer hunting here in Michigan. Then this week's Ask Avery segment. And in our third hour, Chris Kreiner talks about late-season whitetail tactics, taking pictures of your deer, nighttime coyote hunting, and more. And then we wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's all coming up this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination, whether it's open water or ice. Now, who knows if there will be an ice fishing season on Saginaw Bay this winter, but regardless of whether it's ice fishing or open water, Linwood Beach is the perfect destination. It is in the perfect location, has great facilities, great boat launch, wonderful people, a full-service shop. If you are taking advantage of this late-season fall open water trolling on Saginaw Bay, or if you have decided to call it a season and you want to put the boat to bed, Linwood Beach can winterize your boat. They can shrink wrap your boat. They are like your one-stop shop for all things fishing on Saginaw Bay. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. While you're poking around the internet, the online thing, this web thing, whatever you want to call it, if you would check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then jump on over to MichiganBrand.net. MichiganBrand.net is the website for Michigan Brand Meats. Michigan Brand Meats, a partner of mine for several years now. More great people. I can't say enough about them. Their products, including the Mike Avery Hunter Sticks, but their products, the people. I've become really great friends with the Grillo family, the folks behind Michigan Brand Meats. And Nick Grillo, the guy I work with primarily, who's with us right now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, welcome, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, Mike. I'm good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I was waiting to see what your voice sounded like because you've been a little under the weather because you've spent so much time in a deer blind lately.
Exactly. Yeah, my sore throat kind of went away, and now I'm just so stuffy. And so I do apologize ahead of time if I'm coughing and sounding bad on the show this morning.
No. Listen, you sound good, and you have a good excuse if you don't. Tell me about your season so far, Nick. Any good stories? Any venison in the freezer?
I tell you what, this has been probably my most fun season without taking a deer. I've had so many chances, and but as far as right now, I'm still waiting on filling a tag. So I did hunt the weekend for the gun opener, and it was pretty slow for me. I hunted down in southwest Michigan, south of Grand Rapids, and we saw a couple deer, but it was pretty slow compared to last year. And my bow season was great. I saw so many bucks. I had so many opportunities, but I just didn't make it happen. So that's hunting.
Well, that is hunting. So were you gun hunting the same property you had been bow hunting on earlier? Did you go into the gun season with high hopes, thinking, "Man, I'm going to get one of these big shooters running around here"?
Yeah, that was exactly it. Our property that we lease down in Southwest Michigan is a really good rut property. We have some good doe bedding, so I think that's what contributes a lot to it, is the bucks just pile in there pushing and harassing the girls. So they, for 3 weeks since, early Halloween time period, we've been hunting that property hard. And I had so many chances. My brother actually missed one of a really big buck that we've had on camera that we were hoping to have a chance at, shot underneath him. And so then it's like, going into gun season, you say, this is it, these deer are going to step right out. And then opening day, and I only saw 2 deer that day. And then the next day I actually got skunked, and it's like, man, what's going on? This is so much different. So, yeah, it was one of those, you went in with such high hopes, and then it's like scratching your head. What's going on now?
Hey, but it ain't over yet, Nick.
Exactly. And then I saw the pictures of you guys, and even Trent got that buck. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I saw, you guys had a fun year this year, obviously, besides your stroke. But with you guys having the family time, that looks like you've had a great season.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
far.
and it was wonderful to be out there. And I apologize. My bear is still at your shop. I had fully intended to come over, and then things kind of went south for me for a little while. But I'm back up and around now. I'm going to get over and get that bear, Nick, and I appreciate your flexibility in hanging on to that thing for me.
Of course, no worries at all.
And you know what else I appreciate, Nick, is this is something we've done for the last several years now. On Wednesday Night Live now, we have kicked off, by the time folks hear this radio show, we have kicked off our yearly Ham for the Holidays giveaway. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's another year. We're going to be doing it again, and we've had a lot of fun with it. I think, the fan base of you and our social medias and everything, and we do it on your Wednesday Night Lives, but we have a lot of people that tune in and say, they love our hams and everything, so that's great to hear. And we're doing it again, and I know you and me look forward to it every year.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Yeah, what we're going to do is, just like we've done every year, every Wednesday night live on your radio or on your social media show, we're going to give away a free ham, and it's pretty easy to win, huh?
Well, it is. All people have to do is tune in, again, to Wednesday Night Live. It's on my Facebook page, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. And I don't know if you guys do this, Nick, but I think you can also, there is a way you can also live stream it on your Facebook page as well. We have to investigate that a little bit. But people tune in, and I will make it very clear when we're doing the weekly contest, when it'll start. And for that limited time, people will make comments about why they want a Michigan brand ham for the holidays. You are standing by, and you pick the winner, and then you ship it off. And as you say, the response is wonderful. But I get it. These Michigan brand hams are great. Coming up for Thanksgiving, we will have a turkey, and we will have a Michigan brand ham for the holidays at the Avery house, just like we always do, Nick.
Heck yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's our hams from, I guess I can't remember what year exactly, but it's still the one my grandpa's been doing since the either late 70s or 80s. And my grandpa started that ham, like I've told you, you and your listeners on the show. My dad turned it into Michigan brand and kind of went the way of jerky and sausage, but the hams are still something that my grandpa did years ago, and they're still, a big part of Michigan and family traditions and everything.
I look at Michigan brand meats and I'm thinking, in a lot of ways, this is the American dream. Your granddad, started hard work processing deer, and you look at where you guys are today, the size of the company that you've grown into, you're still a family-based company. It's the American dream, Nick.
Yeah, that's a very good way, nice way to put it. Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's stressful, but it's such a, blessing, and it's so fun to be part of it. And we talk about that with our employees all the time. You're part of our growing together and becoming what we are today. we still have some employees that worked for my dad and grandpa before I was even born, or they had lunch with me when I was in diapers, and now I'm working with them and they're still working, and it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, and you started
awesome.
out, primarily on the east side of the state, but you've grown so much. And one of the things I want to let people know about is if you go to your website, michiganbrand.net, there's a store locator button. You can put in your, area code, zip code, whatever it is, and you can find out a Michigan brand outlet near you. And you're all over the state now.
Exactly. Yep. We're pretty far, even below Grand Rapids. We're all the way up to Traverse City, Charlevoix, Sheboygan, Alpena. Obviously the Tri-Cities is pretty hard.
UP.
And then even the UP. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So like you said, you just go to our store locator. All you have to do is enter in a zip code, and you can select if you want 20 miles, 10 miles, 50 miles, and we'll give you a whole list of every location. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It is very cool, and I make it a point as I travel around. I stop into gas stations, party stores, whatever it is, and I kind of poke around. I say, do they have Michigan brand products here? And more often than not, Nick, I will find a rack of Michigan brand products. Now, listen, often the Mike Avery Hunter Stick is there. Not always. I got to talk to you about this, Nick. How come the Mike Avery Hunter Stick, isn't at every outlet that carries Michigan brand meats?
You're right. We got to work on that.
Well, I figured I'd get a pushback from you on that one.
But yeah, that's one of the fun things I hear from a lot of people, whether it's family, friends, or if it's just strangers that I've never even talked to before, and I meet them for the first time. I hear, hey, I was driving down this random road, and I went into this random bait shop or this mom and pop store or this big gas station, and I saw your product. That's so cool that you're in there. And yeah, so we hear it quite often, and I love hearing it. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome.
Well, and listen, let's do some blatant promotion here. If somebody has an outlet that they think would be appropriate for Michigan brand products, they can reach out to you, and, maybe you guys can get something going. That's what happened with Rapid River Knives.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we've had quite a few people do that where they call, and we've had people call from seeing our trucks on the road and seeing, it's a driving billboard, basically. We have Michigan brand decked out on our vans and our semis, and so then people see that and they'll call and say, hey, I saw this. Are you in my area? Or they listen to your show, and same thing. They call us and say, hey, I heard, I want to look at having you guys up this way. And so we've gained a lot of accounts that way, and it's been great.
I'm laughing because they're blowing leaves away from the side of the studio right now. All right, Nick, listen, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for working with me, and thanks for doing another season of Ham for the Holidays. Again, if people want to get involved in that, they tune in Wednesday night to Wednesday Night Live, and all they have to do is say, hey, here's why I want to win a Michigan brand ham. If people don't win, they can go to the website, michiganbrand.net, and they can actually order online, Nick, right from the website. Use the promo code Avery20.
20, correct. Yep, Avery 20. 20% off your whole order.
Wow.
Whether you buy one ham, 20 hams, if you buy just 2 packs of jerky, yep, it will be that whole order, correct.
Michiganbrand.net. Nick Grillo, you're a good guy, a good friend of mine, a hardcore hunter, hardcore angler, man. You are something else. Every time I check your social media feed, it's like, okay, he snuck out, he's doing a little hunting. He snuck out, he's doing a little fishing, right?
Oh, yeah, you know it.
All right, Nick, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Mike.
Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand Meats. Again, the website, michiganbrand.net, michiganbrand.net. Use the promo code Avery20. Get 20% off your entire order. Go to the website, michiganbrand.net. You can use the store locator button to find out where there is a Michigan brand outlet near you. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, I actually check in with another friend of mine. His name is Brad Dupuie. You might know him as Mr. Angler Quest. But that's not the gist of the conversation this week. We might, get into it, but I want to talk about a very cool deer hunt that Brad shared with his son Ethan, and I think it's pretty cool. So we'll talk more about that coming up in hour number 1 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. I did that for the opener. I took my VersaSkins jacket, I laid it on the back of the tailgate of the truck, and I zipped on and snapped down an outer shell of blaze orange for the gun season. It was easy, it was quick, it was very, very slick. If you are looking for high-quality hunting clothes, and you're especially for tall sizes, and big sizes, like 4, 5, 6X, the sizes that are so hard to get, VersaSkins is for you. If you are a saddle hunter, VersaSkins makes products specifically for you as well, a jacket specifically for you. You can go to the website versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Or go to amazon.com, and do a search for VersaSkins brand. Just change your skin for the season you're in, VersaSkins. Want to turn our attention now to another friend of mine. His name is Brad Dupuie. You might know him as Mr. Angler Quest. These days, QUEST. He's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Brad, welcome, buddy. How are you?
Hey, we're doing great, Mike. We're doing great. Always excited to talk to you.
Well, a pleasure is always mine, Brad. This time around, though, I mean, Angler Quest is in the background. I want to talk about an experience you had that looked to me to be very cool. It was with your son, Ethan. Now, Ethan is in a chair, so it's not so easy for him to go hunting, right?
That's correct. He's been confined to a wheelchair and 100% disabled since he's been the age of 12, yes.
But that hasn't stopped him from being hardcore from the outdoors, has it?
It hasn't. You know, as time goes on, his struggles increase, and, you know, he has opportunities when access is given to him to get out afield, and I try to make sure and do that, you know, whenever I can for him.
And recently, you were out at the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge. They have a non-ambulatory hunt out there. Tell me about that.
Well, I'll tell you, that is a great deal with a great group of people. It is a reserved hunt on the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge, and you have to put in for those hunts in the summertime. And then they have a random draw to see if people are drawn. And they have the 15th and the 16th of November and the 17th and the 18th as two different hunt periods for non-ambulatory hunters. And Ethan was fortunate enough to get drawn for the 17th and 18th hunt for an either sex or a buck or a doe harvest within the refuge. And as a result, that's what ended up getting us in there.
Nice. Now, how does this work, Brad, as far as logistics of getting back there? Are there blinds already set up or what?
Yeah, there's, you know, it's always the same group of people that are there cooking, setting up blinds, tracking, organizing, the whole deal. And I tell you what, these people are great. They go out before the hunt start and they set up roughly, I'm going to say 20 to 25 blinds on the dikes themselves, on the dikes where vehicles could get by if needed to get by. And they allow you to go within the refuge and you'll go right on the roads and the dikes and the trails that they have established to drive your non-ambulatory hunter right to the blind. And they have wood platforms with a little angle iron piece that as a ramp to get in it, and they are a nice big blind for the non-ambulatory hunter and the helper.
So these volunteers out there, they're giving up their hunting time to help your hunter.
Yeah, they are. Opening day through the 18th.
Wow.
And they're very passionate about it. And, I'm my son's helper when I go in there, but they also volunteer to be a helper in blind with the non-ambulatory hunter. And they have a little conduit system set up in there for a gun rest that's adjustable. You meet in the morning. It's camaraderie. Everybody's happy to see everybody. They have donuts and coffee and beverages. You have a random draw for the blind that you get. You go to it. If you need help, they help you get to it. When you come in the middle of the day after the morning hunt, and they serve you lunch, and then you go back out in the evening. And I'll tell you, Shiawassee National Refuge is a special place, not just because of the deer hunting, but all the wildlife in general.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Oh, so many different types of waterfowl and sandhill cranes you hear abundant out there this time of year, and it's just a really cool experience.
So your hunt with Ethan then, where opening morning, describe that to me. You're out there opening morning. Is how I know he got a deer, but walk me through the hunt if you would, Brad.
Yeah, he got chosen. He put in for the 17th and the 18th of November. So his first day to be out there was Sunday of this past week here,
sure.
Or I should say Sunday morning.
Yep.
So we met out at the refuge about 5:15 in the morning in their headquarters, and you go through the rules. You get your blind assigned to you, and then from there, myself and Ethan went out in the blind, and I dropped him off all our gear, got him in the blind, and then I took my vehicle, put it in a safe location and not harming other hunters or us, our hunting experience. And
hang tight, Brad. I want you to describe the rest of this hunt because I think it's very cool. We're talking with Brad Dupuie about a hunt he had with his son Ethan at the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge. By the way, you know Brad is Mr. Angler Quest, Quest. You can learn more about Angler Quest pontoons on Facebook, Facebook Angler Quest pontoons. And if we have time, we'll talk more about that as well. Coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on WKYO 1360 AM, also on WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on WKNW 1400 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Now, look, I know you're not putting in Killer Food Plots right now, but you might well be hunting over a Killer Food Plot. We're using their line of scents and attractants as well. And it's never too early to start thinking about next year. Look at as you're sitting out there now, you're looking at your properties thinking, how can I improve this? Killer Food Plots, Rich Krazan and the crew can help you out there. Check out the website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. Right now, we're talking about deer hunting with Brad Dupuie, Mr. Angler Quest, who had a wonderful experience with his son Ethan at the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge and their non-ambulatory hunt. This is basically last weekend. Brad, as we had to take a break, you talked about you guys got settled into the blind for that first morning of the hunt. Then what happened?
Well, we sat tight. It was very mild out. We actually did not see any deer in that morning hunt. So we saw lots of wildlife. We saw lots of cool things. The sounds and the noises out there are incredible. And from there, we packed it up and went in for lunch and headed back out to that same blind in the evening. We saw a bunch of deer, not one of which was anything that Ethan wanted to shoot. So we did not end up harvesting a deer, but we saw a lot of deer, and it was a great hunt. It's not measured by necessarily taking an animal. That hunting experience was great. The next morning, where we were at, we were down a very muddy trail, and they didn't want us going back there. They were worried about us getting stuck. So the next morning, it was the super fog mornings, Monday morning, and we got assigned to a great blind that I know very well, and we got in there, settled in the morning. It was really cool. I talk about the wildlife on the track from the gate to this blind, which is about 1.5 miles in the refuge. We probably had 6 to 7 rabbits come out on the trail in front of us, running in front of us. It was just cool because there was so much wildlife, and we settled into that new blind Sunday morning, and man, did Ethan and I have a great experience. It was magically foggy. Where the deer moved to this spot, it's very close to the blind. And make a long story short, we had an 8-pointer and a spike horn running around. The bigger buck was trying to run that smaller buck out of the area. They settled up about 35 yards from us. We're hitting horns, frolicking about, and I told Ethan, get ready, and they ended up walking right by the blind, and Ethan put a great shot on the 8-pointer and was able to harvest that animal.
Nice. And then what are the logistics of going out and getting it? Because Ethan can't get out there in that terrain, right? So how does that happen to get the animal?
Well, as soon as you shoot, whether you think you hit it or not, you call the tracking team, and the tracking team is of about 6 guys that come out, and you show them where the animal was. You stay in the blind and wait for them to get there. They see where you shot at the animal and then track them down, field dress them, and then bring them up to the blind.
Nice.
It's a great deal.
Well,
and they're really, really happy for Ethan. They were very, very excited about it, as was I, and it was a great, great morning for sure.
Well, I'm happy for Ethan, too, and I was able to share the picture of you and him and of the tracking guys, too, on the Facebook page, so people can see that on my Facebook page. So what a wonderful experience. Congrats to Ethan, and thank you to the folks at the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge. I got a couple of minutes left, Brad. Can we talk about one thing real quick before we let you go? The new Angler Quest pontoons, QUEST. You've got the lineup out there. The big Pro Trolls out there still. The Family Fish is out there still. And you've come up with something for 2025. You've got a lineup of smaller inland Angler Quest boats. What's the thinking there, buddy?
Well, the thinking there is in the environment that we're in. Not as many people necessarily are able to afford a big triple tube. So we wanted to proliferate the lineup into really a specialized boat for the inland lakes, being a more compact boat that's 8 foot wide, a little more trailerable, a little more affordable, and try to offer that to the public on the inland lake environment. We have components within these boats that are very specialized too. We have a quick track extrusion groove, which allows you to put rod holders and rod holder systems and track systems right on the wall itself without clamping onto it. We have a big rod locker that's lockable. The boat is to scale with the size of the boat. It's a great little boat and really is attractive to a lot of people out there.
Well, and folks can hear more about the 2025 lineup of Angler Quest boats with the latest Angler Quest podcast. By the time folks hear the radio show, that podcast will be posted. You can learn more on the Facebook page, Angler Quest Pontoons, and Quest is QUEST, Angler Quest Pontoons on Facebook as well. Brad, congrats on what you've been able to accomplish. Congrats to your son, Ethan, on that beautiful 8-point, and I will talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it.
Brad Dupuie of Angler Quest Boats QUEST telling a great story of how his son Ethan took a beautiful 8-point buck at the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge during their non-ambulatory hunt. It's really a very, very cool thing. And you can see the pictures of that on my Facebook page as well. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 2, I'm going to spend some time talking about deer hunting in Michigan with the DNR's top guide, Chad Stewart. That's coming up in hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and so glad to have you along with us. You know, I always say the best way to listen to this show, if you can, is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station. Your local station has your local news, weather, sports, even your local commercials. Maybe there's a sale or something you want to take advantage of. So the best way, plus the radio stations get the content of the show before the podcast version. Yes, there is a podcast version of the show. The podcast version is available on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's on my Facebook page and just about any other podcast outlet you can think of. If you listen to your podcast somewhere, say it's Amazon Music or Audible or Apple Music or Google Play or iHeart or SoundCloud or Spotify or something like that, you can hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show there. I even put the podcast on YouTube. Now, we're not really doing a video version of the podcast. I know that's the kind of the hot thing these days, that the podcast is video. I put an audio version of the radio show as a podcast on YouTube. Now, there is kind of a video version. I do a live stream for the first segment of the show, and you can find that on my Facebook page and other outlets as well. Regardless, though, of how you are listening to my voice, I do certainly appreciate it. By the way, I do podcasts. I do like podcasting. I think it's a great way to get the message out there. Each month, I do podcasts for Offshore Tackle, Primal Outdoors, and Angler Quest Pontoons. Now, in the previous hour, Brad Dupuie, Mr. Angler Quest, was with us. He was talking about deer hunting, in fact, but there is a new version of the Angler Quest podcast featuring the 2025 lineup. Think about that, 2025, and that's available as well. It is good to be back. I've been back in the studio for a couple of weeks here. Last week was kind of a struggle. I'm feeling real good this week. I felt good enough after having a little bit of a health scare, right, to actually be out there in the whitetail woods for opening morning of the gun season. And it felt great. I have had a personal struggle with deer hunting for the last few years. There have been some things that have happened at the state level, mandatory antler point restrictions I felt were being forced down hunters' throats by other hunters, and it didn't sit right with me, and I was very vocal about it, and some other things happened, and I kind of lost my passion for deer hunting. This last couple of years, though, I've been able to bring it back. And you know how I did that? I took all of the other stuff aside, the antler point restrictions and the mandatory reporting and not being able to bait and all that stuff that I kind of didn't like, and I put it aside. And I concentrated on what deer hunting should be, at least for me. And that was to get out there with my family and enjoy the tradition of deer hunting. Enjoy the Michigan tradition of deer hunting. Enjoy the family tradition of deer hunting that's been going on in my family as long as I can remember, and we're doing a darn good job of continuing it into future generations. Deer hunting in Michigan's a big deal, isn't it? If you want to start an argument in Michigan, you talk politics, religion, or deer hunting. But it's a big deal because so many people are so passionate about it. Chad Stewart knows that probably better than anybody in this state. He is the big game specialist for the Michigan DNR, and deer hunting is one of the things he's responsible for. And I thought, you know what? It's a good time to get Chad back on the show, if he has time, and he does, to talk a little bit about deer hunting this opening weekend and more, and he has graciously agreed to give me some time. Chad, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike, and let me say it's good to hear your voice. I'm glad you're on the mend.
I thank you, Chad. I appreciate that, and I'll tell you right now, it's modern technology getting into ER quickly, but beyond that, it's people's support, it's people's prayers, and it's God's grace that is why I'm here today. But I appreciate you saying that, and I do appreciate your time, Chad. My family had a wonderful experience opening morning. My grandson Trent shot a nice buck, and it was just wonderful to be back out there. Now you have some stats. Now you being the department on the opening weekend. What did you see?
Yeah, it's one of the great advantages of having the online harvest reporting thing. Before, going back to 2021, if you were to ask me these questions, everything would be completely anecdotal. And we probably wouldn't have an answer until late spring, maybe even early summer, until some of the surveys get returned. Now, especially after 3 years of having this, we can go through and look and compare day by day. And that's really been great in terms of responsiveness and talking about deer management, which in a way that we haven't been able to do before.
Do you feel, is your sense that most hunters are actually now abiding by the mandatory reporting? Are you seeing a pretty good percentage on that, Chad?
Yes. If I'm taking your question very literally and the answer is most, then yes. I do think that we're well above like a 50% reporting rate. Are we at 100%? There's no chance, right? And we'll never get there.
I was going to say, it never will be. No,
it'll never get there. The data that we're looking at seems to be fairly comparable year to year in terms of trends. There are some minor differences that occur. That's probably annual and yearly variation. But I think we're getting to the point where we have good data and good trend data to talk about this. It's never going to be 100%. So when someone looks at the data and says, oh, they have this many deer reported harvested in Michigan or killed in Michigan, that's not going to be true. That's only going to be a reported value. It's essentially a minimum count. So we still are going to continue to do our surveys to try to estimate what the overall number is, but we're going to be putting more emphasis on this because really the trends is what's important and what we're looking at.
And what did you see?
Yeah, since the firearm season started, we had a Friday opener, obviously. We've had nearly, as of November 19th, we've had just under 79,000 deer reported already through firearm season. Opening day, we had over 40,000 deer reported being taken on November 15th. Really similar to 2023, very similar numbers. I've analyzed this before. It turns out to being about one deer killed in the state of Michigan per second of daylight or shooting hours on opening day. And that's just an incredible way to think about how many people are out there enjoying deer hunting on opening day.
I want to make sure I understand. I got to wrap my brain around this. If you look at this statistically, it's one deer per second of opening day killed somewhere in the state?
Per opening, per daylight opportunity.
For daylight
so
opportunity.
For first shooting light to last shooting light, and you factor in, the sunrise time, the sunset time, and the seconds that are involved, between those two, you're looking about one deer per second of daylight shooting.
Wow. And where are these deer being taken? Anecdotally, again, I would look at this and say, well, I bet you most of those are in the southern part of the state.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Southern Michigan is always going to be the highest. Right now we've got 3 counties that are over 4,000 deer reported. Sanilac County's leading the way, followed by Saginaw and Jackson County. You look in places like Montcalm and Newaygo counties are just under 4,000 deer. So a lot of those southern counties are going to be the deer killing counties, and it slowly declines as you go further north.
How was the UP? I mean, I've got friends who are still in the UP right now and say, man, we haven't seen a deer yet.
Yeah, the UP numbers are up and really unsurprisingly. So there's 2 different ways that we can look at metrics. We can look at just the total kill as it stands today, but then we can also look at the kill by what we call the submit date. And in many cases right now in this time of season, we're going by the submit date because there's that 72-hour window to report.
Yeah.
So, just looking at the most recent day, you're not including deer that have already been killed, but are not going to be registered for another at least 2 days. So that number always continues to grow. And as it stands right now, deer compared to last year from the Upper Peninsula, the harvest is up, or the submitted harvest is up about 16%.
16%. Hang tight,
Yeah.
Chad. Look, we got a lot more things we can talk about and will. We're talking with Chad Stewart, big game specialist for the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We're talking about the mandatory deer check. And I'll be honest, when I shot my doe here earlier in the season, it had been so long since I'd taken a deer, I forgot all about it and didn't report it. I got to be honest, I didn't report it within the 72 hours, but it was just after that. So I figured there was a grace period. So we're talking with Chad about that and lots more right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba on WCHT, that's 600 AM, 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the company that makes this sound. You know what sound that is by now. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife locking back open. I just took this out of my pocket. That's got a nice edge on it. This is the same knife that I used to field dress my bear several weeks ago and to field dress my doe here a few weeks ago. I think a knife is one of the most valuable tools that someone who loves the outdoors can have. I use this thing every day, from something as mundane as opening a box, cutting shipping tape, or at field dressing a deer. Rapid River knives are handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. They have a lifetime guarantee, and I think they are probably the best Christmas gift idea that you can have. If you go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, you can use the promo code Avery10 and get 10% off. Better yet, if you go to their showroom in Rapid River on US 2, just east of Rapid River, you can check it out. You can see everything there in person, including the brand new, very cool Stormy Cromer Rapid River knife that they have, that there are very few of those left. Again, go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com. Use the promo code Avery10, and you get 10% off. And don't wait till the last minute. If you're looking for a Christmas gift idea, Rapid River sells out every year. Every year, if you go there December 24th, they don't have a knife in the place. So don't wait till the last minute, rapidriverknifeworks.com. We're talking now about deer hunting here in Michigan, and why not, right? We're in the middle of the firearm deer season with Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Chad, I know from talking with you in the past that there is a concern. Yeah, we know, everybody listening to the show knows that hunters are the number one tool for managing the whitetail herd in Michigan. We also know that hunter numbers are down, and there has been a concern about how do you effectively manage the herd with fewer numbers. What's the status of that conundrum these days, Chad?
Yeah, short term this year, we're actually seeing about a 1% increase in our number of individuals purchasing a license. So that's good. Long term, I don't think the trend is changed. We did some looking here recently, and we came up with something like 1 in 5 hunters in Michigan right now are 65 and older. So that doesn't really bode well for, the strength of our future hunter numbers. Fast forward ahead 10 years, 15 years, a lot of those hunters are going to get out of hunting. And while we'll certainly add a few new ones, we've been unable to add them at the same rate as the number of hunters who are declining. So we're expecting those overall deer hunter numbers to continue to decline. And Mike, you're right. Like, looking ahead, we can't keep doing things the way that we've been doing it, because we're going to be operating with far fewer hunters on our landscape.
Well, and you have tried to address this. I mean, you look at the tools you have given hunters with increased doe tags, with basically a longer firearm season these days. I mean, you've given us every tool to try to increase that harvest, but is it working?
So the short answer is and again, I'm really speaking mostly towards Lower Peninsula, especially southern Michigan.
Okay.
It's a different story when you get up north and in the Upper Peninsula, but the answer is no. I don't think the solution is in changing regulations. It's not about allowing more deer to be shot. It's not about allowing more time for deer to be shot. It's not about allowing different types of equipment or new seasons. It's really about access onto private land. So, Mike, when we started talking 79,000 deer reported in firearm season, so far, only about 22,000 of those have been antlerless deer. Meanwhile, about 57,000 of them have been antlered deer. And that number always changes a little bit, especially as you get into late November and early December. We'll start taking more and more antlerless deer relative to antler deer. But at the same time, about 3/4 of the harvest is already done. So those numbers aren't going to be as impactful. We've got to try to take antlerless deer a little bit sooner in the season, because once hunters' freezers get full, the incentive to go out and shoot antlerless deer becomes less and less.
This is interesting. You say about 3/4 of the harvest is done at this point. So 75% of the deer that are going to get shot, roughly, basically, are done. They've already been shot.
Yeah. It's probably maybe a little bit under that, but yeah, most of the deer that are going to be killed through the first week and a half of firearm season, you're talking about a majority of the deer. All those, whether it's the muzzleloader season, whether it's the late antlerless season, late archery season, they don't contribute nearly the amount of deer that the firearm season contributes. Now, we've got this added extended season in January that our Natural Resources Commission passed. So that'll go from January 2nd through, I think, the 12th. I don't know what that season's going to hold, so maybe I'm probably being a little too bold with my numbers in terms of 70 to 75%. It could be that that's a really impactful season, and we'll wait and see. But history tells us that there's generally very limited participation the later in the season you get.
Well, let's talk about the UP a little bit. It used to be, when I was a kid growing up, again, this is a long time ago now, growing up on the west side of the state, that if you wanted to hunt deer, this is what my dad did. He would jump in the car and head north and wait at the bridge because, well, there was no bridge, wait to take the ferry across, and he hunt in the UP because that's where the deer were. We had very few deer downstate. I realize that things have changed now, but this whole concept of UP deer camps and going north and deer hunting in the UP, I feel bad for my friends in the UP because they almost universally, almost every one of them tells a tale of woe that they're not seeing deer like they used to. Can that be addressed, Chad? Is that something that I'm going to see in my lifetime change?
I mean, I'm just going to be pretty honest with you, Mike. I don't see that changing really anytime soon. There's a lot of factors going on in the Upper Peninsula that have contributed and led it to this point. Some of them are within our control and many of them are outside of our control. So one of the big things that, you'll hear the department always talk about a lot is, the impact of winter in the Upper Peninsula. And everybody's always said, we've always had really hard winters in the Upper Peninsula, and certainly that's true. But when you start plotting out like severe winters over time, what we're seeing is longer and more severe winters successively. And that's what's really having a major impact on our deer herd up there. That coupled with some habitat declines, and I just spoke with one of the researchers up there that's doing some of the Northwoods research and what I would call the mid snowfall zone, and he thinks that despite despite the low numbers of deer on the landscape in that mid-snowfall zone, he thinks deer are what they call at carrying capacity. So in other words, the habitat is so generally poor that it can't support a large number of deer. There's going to have to be some major changes to the habitat and habitat improvement, and that goes beyond just winter habitat. But he's also positing that it's summer habitat as well.
Well, I knew our deer yards were gone in some areas. That's wintertime carrying capacity, and that's a problem that's not going to get fixed overnight for sure.
Yeah, when you talk about the major species that are important for deer, especially in the winter, you're talking about cedar, you're talking about hemlock. Those are slow-growing species, and they are going to take time. And when you're looking at really poor winter habitat right now, and maybe even trying to overwinter too many deer in those areas, it's going to make regeneration that much harder. So you've got a lot of challenges there with bringing those deer yards, those traditional deer yards back. There's a lot of habitat work that's going to be done. And when you start talking about habitat work in the Upper Peninsula, you're talking about decades rather than years.
Yeah. And predation. I mean, a lot of people would like to blame the wolves. I know the DNR, I know the department has kind of poo-pooed that that's not the case. But, man, the Yoopers themselves will say, look, we got more wolves than deer. I don't know if that's true or not. I know it's not true. But they are a problem, but that's a problem that's out of your hands. People want to blame the DNR, but you guys can't institute a wolf hunt.
No, they're federally protected right now. And yeah, that's obviously one of the things that always drives a lot of the conversation. And I think it's a conversation that's worth having. It's an important part of deer management, but I think the challenge is to not get so laser focused on one thing and get hung up on this idea of a simple fix, that if we can only hunt wolves, if we can only manage our coyotes better, that our deer herd would be flush again. It's deeper and more complex than that, and I think that's what has to be recognized, that there's multiple factors going on here, and they all have to be addressed both individually and then collectively.
Man, I've told you this before. I would not want to be a deer manager in Michigan, because this whole thing is like this three-dimensional chessboard that keeps. It's like trying to hit a moving target, and it's multidimensional, and there's so much going on, and so many people looking at you guys, and so many eyes on you. Why would you want to do this these days, Chad?
To me, it's the interesting. It's these wicked problems that are really interesting and complex. So from my standpoint, it's really interesting and fascinating, and it's less about the deer biology. I mean, deer are the most studied animal in the world. I mean, there are literally tens of thousands of research papers on white-tailed deer. We know how deer populations respond to this or that. The challenging part is the cultural side of things.
There we go. Yep.
That's
hey,
the
listen,
side of
can I offer you the coveted third? I don't usually do this in the second hour. Can you stick around? Let's talk a little more.
How could I pass it up?
How could you pass up the coveted third? We're talking with Chad Stewart of the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. So when we come back, a few more topics for Chad, then we'll get to the Ask Avery segment that's coming up in hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, that's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Premier Maritime Training. If you've ever wanted to get your captain's license, I think this is your best bet. Captain John Littlefield taught my captain's class. And if he can help me become a licensed charter captain, believe me, he can help you get licensed as well. Check out the website, pmtcaptains.com, for more info. John has classes across the state, and I'm sure you can find one that fits your schedule. That's PMT Captains. Right now I'm talking with Chad Stewart of the DNR. He's the big game specialist for the Michigan DNR. Chad, before the break, you mentioned something we got to follow up on. We are supposed to have sound scientific wildlife management practices in this state. And then you bring up social science or social issues, social pressure. What role does that play?
It plays a role. I would say that there's a hierarchy, though. From the department standpoint, we make the recommendations from a biological standpoint first and foremost, and then social science sort of follows that. And I guess what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example of our November 15th opening day, right? 80% of hunters prefer to keep that. So for us to recommend making a change to the November 15th opener, that means you're upsetting 4 out of 5 deer hunters. Biologically, we know that November 15th opens on every day of the week, and we can look at that over a 2-decade period and see that it really doesn't have an impact at all in terms of overall harvest. So we could move that, but why would we if there's no biological impact, but the social impact is preventing us from doing that? So there's aspects and connections in terms of how biological and social science are considered.
All right, let me ask you about something else, and this is going to be kind of a personal thing, okay? You, the department, want us to kill more deer, so you want to give us every tool possible to do that. Let me rephrase this. Baiting in the Lower Peninsula would allow us to kill more deer. I can't hunt over bait. I'm not going to take that chance. But a lot of people in the Lower Peninsula still bait. And when you get people around you baiting, Chad, I don't care how good your food plots are, whatever you've done for habitat improvement, if you've got people around you baiting, they're going to draw the deer there. I know you're going to say, look at Avery, we can't allow baiting because because of the disease factor. I don't know, Chad. And if you did allow baiting at this point, you have basically shot yourself in the foot because you've taken away your credibility about CWD and the disease factor. Are we ever going to see baiting in the Lower Peninsula, even maybe with a baiting permit, Chad?
You're asking me to look into a crystal ball. I don't
yes,
know if I can look ahead of
yes.
that. So, yeah, I don't know if I can give you an answer with that. I can say that when we first started banning baiting, we actually were reporting an increase in total harvest. But this also kind of goes into the topic of the social science piece, Mike. So legally, we know that baiting is not allowed in the Lower Peninsula. But if I cut into any more deer up in the Mayo area and then see corn fall out, carrots fall out, apples fall out. I mean, there's so many people that are doing it. So that biologically, we can make the recommendation at the state level. The hard part is convincing hunters that this is what's best interest for the deer herd. And that's a really difficult topic to discuss. And I think we also look at things very differently between state management and individual hunters. We're looking at impacts of CWD or bovine tuberculosis 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. And can we alter that by making some changes today? Most hunters, when they go out, are thinking, what am I going to shoot this year? And sometimes those visions don't align.
Real quick. Did CWD, did that end up being not the threat that you originally feared that it would be?
No, I wouldn't say it that way at all. We always knew that CWD moves glacially slow. It's very slow moving, but it still continues to be progressive, and it does continue to ramp up. We're actually starting to hear, and I don't have numbers on this, but I've talked with folks in our lab. we're getting more reports of visibly sick deer in places like Montcalm County. It's not alarming. It's not overwhelming, but it's more than what it was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I suspect that trend to continue. So it's always been a long game. I think if we could go back and do it, I think the messaging would be a little bit different. It sounded more alarmist.
Yeah.
And in reality, it was more of a long-term thing, which we always knew. I don't think the message came across that way, though.
Chad, I always enjoy our conversations. You're always very generous with your time, and you know, I feel like you're very straightforward with me, and I appreciate that, Chad. And I'll wish you a good season, and we'll talk again soon. You can count on it.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR, a big game specialist for the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. I enjoy our conversations. We'll take a break. When we come back, I'm going to switch gears completely, and I'm going to get very personal in this week's Ask Avery segment, but I'm hoping it can help you out as well. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. And you can hear us, let's go north of the bridge once again. Let's go to Manistee, WTIQ 1490 AM 95.3 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. Now, the way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me a question that you want me to answer directly, or something you'd like me to pass along to the folks on the DNR or MUCC, or something that I might have access to that you don't. The best way to get those questions to me is send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. It's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. This week, the Ask Avery segment is talking about what happened to me, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, what happened? Did you know you were having a stroke? What was it like? The whole 9 yards. So I'm going to take this last opportunity right here to talk about it. It's a life-changing experience. I had my stroke. I'm in good health. I did not have high blood pressure. I did not have high cholesterol. I had my stroke as I was walking back from the mailbox in town. It's not a long distance. People say, did you know you were having a stroke? I knew something was wrong. I felt like the right side of my brain had collapsed on itself. My vision went crazy. My balance was shot. There was no pain. I was able to make it into the house. I was able to make it into a chair and sit down. My wife, Denise, says, what's wrong? I said, I don't feel good. She looked at me. The right side of my face was drooping. She said I was slurring my words. I tried to hold my head up using my right hand. My right hand kept falling away. So immediately, she called my son James. She called 911. I bring this up because I want you to be aware of some things. Number one is, if you think you are having a stroke, or if somebody else is having a stroke, do not mess around. It's better to seek help and not need it than to need help and not get it. They say you have 4 hours in a stroke situation to get this miracle drug into you. It's called TPA. It's a clot-busting drug. They got it in me in less than an hour. So I went from being in the emergency room, of not being able to communicate in some cases. If they put a piece of paper in front of me and said, what is this? What is this? I wasn't able to tell them. I mean, I was really out of it. It was pretty bad. It was not a TIA. This is a pretty bad stroke. They got the drug in me in less than an hour. And by the time they got me out of ER up to ICU, when my family saw me again, they said I was a different person. this miracle, this TPA is like a miracle drug, but you got to get it in you right away. So if you think somebody is having a stroke, don't mess around. As I've gone to physical therapy and speech therapy after this, which fortunately I don't need now, they said there are lots of stories of people who knew something wasn't right. They thought something was wrong, but they went to bed and said, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll feel better. And they didn't. And then it was too late, right? So I'm doing great. The vision problems have almost all cleared up. I can function just fine. I don't really feel like I have any balance issues anymore. I'm lucky. I'm blessed. I'm here. I am fine. I am healthy. They've given me some drugs that I'm going to have to take for the rest of my life now, some things that make my blood slipperier, so I hopefully won't have another stroke in the future. I have had to give up cigars. I thought that was going to be terrible because I was terribly addicted to cigars. I'm doing okay. I think it's a small price to pay. I credit my wife and my son, who got me into ER right away. I credit modern technology, modern medicine, that TPA, that miracle drug that I think saved the quality of my life. I thank you for your prayers. Again, the number of prayers, the number of people praying for me who told me they were praying for me is humbling and mind-boggling that this old radio guy could have so many people reach out and say, Avery, we heard what happened to you. We are praying for you. Our church is praying for you. Our prayer group is praying for you. We as individuals are praying for you. I felt that. That meant a lot. And ultimately, it was God's grace that is allowing me to be sitting here in this radio studio today. God was indeed watching out for me. It wasn't my time, and he saved me. Now I just have to figure out why. And I may never know why. But thank you. Thank you for the prayers. Thank you to God for reaching out and saving me. And I'm back, baby. I'm here. And hour 3 is coming up.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to our number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. So how are you? What's going on? I mean, as you're hearing this show, Thanksgiving. Is that right, John? Thanksgiving? It is. Thanksgiving is Thursday. Time just flies, doesn't it? And here we are now in the latter part, basically, of the firearm deer season too, right? I was talking with Chad Stewart in the previous hour, and he said several things that really got my attention. But he said, Mike, at this point in the season, basically, roughly 75% of the deer that are going to be harvested have been harvested. And statistically, most of the deer that are taken are on the in gun season are on opening day of the gun season. So honestly, I mean, there are statisticians and there are liars, and sometimes it's hard to tell between the two, right? Is the old saying. But the odds are against you at this point. If you haven't taken a buck, the odds say you're not going to. But here's the thing. You know you're not going to unless you're out there. You can't take a deer from the shop, from your office, from your couch, from your garage. You have to be out there to make it happen. And the more you are out there and the longer you are out there, the more you increase your odds of still filling that tag. Chris Kreiner filled his first part of his tag early on. He took a beautiful buck. And he actually sent me a picture of it, and I posted it on the Facebook page. Chris is a master with taking images after dark, primarily coyote hunting images. But, man, some of the pictures he takes are just absolutely amazing. So I wanted to get Chris on in this third hour to talk a little bit about hunting the late whitetail season, about some photography techniques, and about getting ready for some nighttime coyote hunting as well. And he has agreed to do that, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Chris, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I am doing great. I'm glad to be here, and I'm just so looking forward to the rest of this year, the rest of the season. I mean, that big buck that you took that I saw a picture of, that was a bow season buck, wasn't it?
Yes, it was November 7th I took that buck.
November 7th. Man, you talk about the heart of the whitetail rut. Right there is it.
I'll tell you, Mike, that is my favorite time of the year to be in the tree stand.
Tell me the story of this buck. Yeah, that buck, was he chasing does or what?
No, he literally just showed up out of nowhere. He was just on the search looking for a hot doe. And this is what I tell a lot of my friends and followers is like, that prime time during the rut, if you can be in your tree stand, you don't know when it's going to happen. And this buck literally showed up underneath my tree stand at 10 yards. And before I even knew he was there, he just showed up, just like a ghost. And I had literally about 15 seconds between the moment I shot him, from the moment I saw him, and he's moving through the brush, I had a small window of opportunity, a small opening through the brush that I had to stop him in perfectly. That all happened, and my arrow was thrown at about 15 seconds. So that's not very much. If you're one of those late afternoon, wait till 4 o'clock to hit your tree stand, you would have missed that opportunity, because this was about 3:45. I usually try to get in my tree stand at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Obviously try to get some work done throughout the day, but that is a prime time. If you can do it, you can sit in your tree stand all day and have a great chance at a good Michigan buck.
This is interesting because I was just having this same conversation with my son James about all it takes is, I use the time frame of 10 seconds, in your case 15 seconds, but all it takes is a few seconds in the right place with the right buck, and it can make for a hell of a season.
Absolutely. It's such a small window that we're trying. I mean, you spend all this time, all this effort, all this money throughout the season preparing for that one, possibly 10, 15 second opportunity, and you got to be in your stand for that to happen.
Yeah. And you also told me there was something unique about the way you took this picture that actually got the attention of some radio people.
Yeah, so after you had posted that picture on your page, Banana 101.5 ended up reaching out to me saying, hey, can we write up a little story on your deer and use your photo? And so I was like, absolutely, yeah, I'd love to see that happen. I didn't expect it to take the turn that it did. They wrote the story more about the photography side of it than they did about the actual hunt. And it took an amazing turn. And I ended up reaching out to them yesterday just to be like, hey, how did that end up going over the weekend? It got some 200,000 hits over the weekend.
No kidding.
So it went very well.
Wow.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Well, you do have this niche, Chris, about taking unique pictures after dark. Now, a lot of them are coyote hunting pictures for sure, and we'll talk more about that. But how did you figure out this niche that you've carved out here with these after dark pictures that are so cool?
Yeah, and a lot of your cell phones today actually have this feature or capability. I do use a DSLR for all of my nighttime images, but it's called long exposure. And what that does is it allows that camera the extra time to draw in the light from the surrounding area, whether it be the stars, the moon, any lighting that you add to your game, whether it be a flashlight or other cell phone, flashlight next to you. There's so many different ways to add light to the scene. And then I've found that the lighting is what really draws out the dramatics and brings out the picture and makes it stand out, especially at night. And then if you can get that starscape added into it, then it just adds a whole neat little feature to the image. And it's been awesome learning this technique.
Well, and I'm glad you bring up the fact you don't have to have a DSLR. Like I got my iPhone in my hand right now. This thing takes, if you know how to use it, it takes amazing pictures and, in fact, shoots some pretty cool video, too. I mean, you can use the night mode on this thing to take some cool pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe even your Samsung's
absolutely.
as well, your Android phones.
Yeah.
So there's nighttime features in most of these. As long as you understand how to access that and you can make some manual adjustments, you can really do a lot. And I highly recommend using a tripod of some sort, whether it be, if you're going to take them at night, it's very important to have your phone as still as possible for it to take as good of an image as possible without the motion blur. From you shaking your hand.
Yeah, it's just about impossible to hand hold a time-lapse picture, right?
Correct. Yes. So it's very important to have a steady structure of some sort to mount your phone to.
Hey, I got to take a break here in a couple of minutes, and we'll switch, the tone of this conversation. But I know you're not as hardcore of a deer hunter as you used to be. But give me some tips. Give us some tips about this latter part of the firearm season. I mean, how do you approach this second part of the gun season now? Because things have changed, Chris.
Yeah, so we're getting out of this rut phase. I actually took a picture of a great buck last week who was tending a doe in my backyard. But we're coming out of this rut phase, and you're going to start finding these does working in more of your food sources again. So I like hunting food plots myself, your rye plots, your late season plots, or if you got some corn stubble in the area, that's going to draw all the deer to a food source at that point. And if there happens to be another doe that comes in late into the season, comes into estrus, then those bucks are going to be checking those plots, trying to find those does that might still come into season. So it's very important to be on those food sources, in my opinion.
So hunt the does. This later part of the season, hunt the does.
Right. And I mean, if you're okay when you got room in your freezer, you got friends that have room in their freezer, there, especially in southern Michigan, we have a ton of does. So don't be hesitant to take out a couple of good does at least. Some properties need it more than others.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because, the old school way of thinking, like my dad would get a doe tag and then burn it so nobody would shoot a doe. You don't shoot does. And then Chad Stewart of the DNR was on with me in the second hour. He's like, man, we need to shoot more does. That's a complete reversal. And some hunters just can't wrap their brain around it even today, but we have to.
Absolutely. I know my grandpa and in some cases even my dad, he's coming around to it, but it's really hard for him to shoot a doe because, yeah. I mean, I can remember my younger years where my dad had to apply for a doe and tag and he sometimes didn't draw. And so it's really hard for him to wrap his head around, like, we need to shoot does. Get them out of here.
We do. Yep. And, if you need more encouragement, a big old matriarchal doe is a real trophy. She can be a real challenge. We're talking with Chris Kreiner. By the way, you can learn more about Chris. Go to his website, ckreinermedia.com. And Kreiner is Kreiner. ckreinermedia.com. There you will see a lot of nighttime pictures, a lot of coyote pictures, and we'll talk more with Chris about that after the break. And, of course, then we'll wrap up this hour with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar as well. I have no idea what he has for us this week, but I can guarantee that it will indeed be good. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. You can hear us in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can hear us in Traverse City, WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let them create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. Now, what can they be doing for you now? Well, still some fall cleanup, some holiday containers. These are pretty sweet because they make your patio, your front porch, the entrance to your home look beautiful, yet you don't have to do it. You get in touch with the folks at Reader, you tell them what you're looking for, they put it together for you, and boom, it shows up on your, they deliver it for you even, so it shows up at your place. That is a real time saver, and time these days is so valuable, right? You can make more money, but you can't make more time. So if you can save time, the folks from Reader can help you out. I learned that a while ago. When they were doing a lot of maintenance. They still do maintenance for me on the yard. They don't do any mowing anymore. And isn't it interesting that we have to mow our yard so late this year because we finally got the rain and Mother Nature's like, hey, I'm going to make the grass grow in November. If you are looking for snow removal this winter, the folks from Reader can help you out there as well. And it's not too early. I realize it's still fall, but it's not too early to start thinking about your projects for next year. Get in touch with the folks at Reader. Tell them what you want to do. Get on the list and start working together. The website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. While you are online, if you would check out my website, I'd appreciate it. MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And then head on over to CKreinerMedia.com. And Kreiner is Kreiner, CKreinerMedia.com. That's the website of my guest right now, Chris Kreiner. Chris, during the break, I'm in the studio here with Jonathan Dent. He pulled up your website and said, man, this guy's got some beautiful pictures. So people are noticing your work, buddy.
Thank you. Yes, I've greatly enjoyed being behind the camera and capturing what images I can. I absolutely love it.
You are very well known for your predator hunting, in particular your predator hunting after dark. Is that something, coyote hunting in particular, do you do that during the deer season, or do you wait till deer season's over to get out in the coyote woods?
That's hit and miss. So right now in southern Michigan, below the rifle line, we can't coyote hunt at night. Ultimately, we are restricted to certain calibers that most coyote hunters don't bother going out in the field with anymore. Since centerfire at night passed, everybody likes to run centerfires, not rim fires. If you're above the line, then you could be out there hunting coyotes. If I was above the rifle line, I'd be hunting them year round. Now, some landowners, they don't want you out on their property during deer season, and that's completely fine, but there's other landowners. It's taken a lot of years of me showing them images of what it looks like in the field and videos, how the deer react when I'm in the field. And the deer react more negatively to coyotes than they ever do to us coyote hunters who are out there at night. We're not going in the woods. We're staying in the fields. And when a coyote comes through, you can see if there's a herd of deer out there, the herd of deer will part. And that's how you know, like, oh, there's a coyote coming. It might be down in a low area, but you can see the deer kind of going one way and deer going the other way. So you watch in that area, and more often than not, there's a coyote coming in.
I find it interesting that deer's reaction to you as hunters. I mean, obviously they know you're there, right? Because their senses are so good, they know you're there, but they don't perceive you as a threat. Is that what it is?
I think it's a combination of two things. A, we're playing the wind. So the wind is always going in our face as a general rule, or a slight crosswind to where we're expecting these coyotes to come from. So the deer's sense of smell is no good to them with how we're setting up. Their eyesight is not that great after dark, so they can't see us. About the only thing they can do is hear us. And same with how they hear a coyote. So they can hear our footsteps and the cadence of our footsteps. And that does bother them if we get too close. But they also hear the coyote's cadence when a coyote is running through the field. And that's what causes them to separate. We're walking into the fields pretty quietly. So usually the deer are about 100 yards away from us and they don't have a care in the world. We'll call in a coyote, we'll shoot the coyote. Sometimes the deer will move off 50 to 100 yards after we shoot the coyote, but usually they pick their head up after we shoot and then they put their head right back down and go back to feeding. So it just generally doesn't bother the deer.
You talk about your cadence. So as deer hunters, as we walk into the woods in the morning before it gets light, is there anything we can do about our cadence? Can we stop and start and stop and start? Something to minimize our intrusion?
That's really tough, especially in the leaves. I mean, how often do we perceive the cadence of a squirrel as a possible deer? I mean, the squirrels have gotten me a handful of times. So it is really tough to change that. And you'll often notice that, when you're walking into the woods, you'll hear the deer take off. They'll snort and run. Sometimes they don't snort and they just run. But one of the things right now, and I don't know whether the DNR will do something about this someday or not, but right now they do not restrict the kind of optics that you use while you're in the stand. So I do run a thermal monocular when I'm walking to my stand in the morning and I'm leaving at night. So I know if there's any deer around, I can either stop and wait for them to move off, or I can take a different route so I'm not spooking those deer. So since I'm a coyote hunter at night, I got the thermal monocular anyway. I'm not saying that deer hunters to spend anywhere from $1,500 to $4,000 on a thermal monocular, but since I already have it, it is not a nice piece of equipment to have.
It is amazing to me how predator hunting has evolved. When you look at, yes, now you can use centerfire after dark. You're not having to use high-powered lights anymore, because you remember early on you were using high-powered lights, and the reflection of those lights in the coyote's eyes was how you identified the target. Man, we've come a long way.
Oh my goodness, have we ever? When I started in 2000, it was January 2017, and I started with lights. And I hunted with a couple of guys that had the thermal setups. And, in my mind, I'm like, okay, here's a $200 light. How in the world will I ever spend this kind of money on a thermal setup? I mean, at the time, it was just to get started was $6,000 into a thermal setup. So it's really come a long way. And now most people that I know are at a minimum running a night vision optic and with a thermal monocular. And several guys I know are running thermal monoculars and thermal optics on their rifles. So it is just leaps and bounds from what it was 7 years ago.
So, boy, in just 7 years. So help me understand this, Chris. I get, like when you're deer hunting, you end up with venison for the freezer. What's the appeal of coyote hunting, and why spend that much money on something that most people aren't going to eat anyway?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. It's how turkeys sometimes respond when you're in the turkey woods. You love hearing that turkey gobble. When I'm in the coyote woods, I love hearing the coyote howl. Now, when I was younger and I was deer hunting, goodness, talk about making the hair stand up on the back of your neck. I mean, that's the last thing I wanted 50 yards from me as I'm walking to the tree stand. But now I get such a feeling of an accomplishment because you're taking out pretty much the top predator besides us in Michigan, unless you go into the UP and you get into the wolf territory. But coyotes are very smart. They're very agile and they're tough. And so they're quite the animal to pursue.
Have you ever predator hunted in the UP and come across wolves?
I have not, but I've known several guys who have called in wolves while they're coyote hunting in the UP. So that's very important to ID your target and know what you're looking at.
Oh man, ain't that the truth? So is it obvious when you're looking through your optics? Is it obvious a difference between a coyote and a deer or anything else?
It does take, now with today's higher end thermal optics, it's pretty obvious on what you're looking at. And obviously you need to be able to differentiate between a coyote and a domestic dog as well. Because you can call in, the neighbor sometimes might let their animals roam free. You can call in domestic.
So I can see where that would be tricky.
Yeah. So the thing is a coyote and a domestic kind of have a different, I talk about cadence and how they come running in. There's a cadence difference between fox and coyote. So you can see kind of just by how they're interacting, what kind of animal it is. But also when they get closer, when or even if they're like 200 yards out, you can start seeing that tail. A fox is going to have a longer tail. It's almost as long as its body if you actually lay them side by side. A coyote is going to have a shorter tail, and then a domestic dog is usually going to have a curve to the tail. It's going to kind of have a little bit of a hook. So those are there's a multitude of different things you're looking for.
A fox is a legal target, though, isn't it?
From October 15th through, I believe, March 1st is when fox season closes. So yes, as of right now, fox is a legal target. But in the off season, I mean, obviously we can, depending on how things go with the NRC and everything, we've been able to hunt coyotes year round up until this year. So you can call fox in year round. So you got to make sure you know your target.
And real quick before we let you go, bobcat. Have you ever hunted bobcats?
I have. So bobcats you have to hunt strictly during the day. You can't not hunt those at night. But I did successfully, after 7 years of hunting bobcat, I successfully took my first bobcat this last January.
Oh, nice.
So, I'll tell you, they're a different creature all in themselves. They take a lot more patience, but goodness, what a trip that is when you finally get one to commit.
Well, I hear it's like, you look at the difference between your dogs, your pet dogs, and your cats. I mean, they're two different critters the same way when you're hunting those things. So congrats on that, Chris. Listen, always a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate your talent. I appreciate your work, and I would send people to the website, ckreinermedia.com, ckreinermedia.com to learn more. And let's talk again as we get fully into the breeding season here in February or so, okay?
Sounds great. Thank you for having me on, Mike.
Chris, always a pleasure. Chris Kreiner of ckreinermedia.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, just a few more things I want to talk about, and then we will wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. My name is Mike Avery. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I'd love to hear from you. Love to see your pictures. Send them to me, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't send them to me in a Facebook message. That doesn't work out. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Port Huron and WPHM 1380 AM. You can hear us in Taos and WIOS 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. In fact, you can hear the show twice each weekend on WIOS. You can also hear the show twice each weekend on WSGW in Saginaw. That's 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now, here with Jonathan Dent. And John was just telling me they want to move me, which I think is pretty gutsy. They want to move me. So we're talking about that right now. So we'll see where that goes, John. No, I told you, whatever needs to be done, I'm okay with. I try to be as flexible as possible. I try to be an easy guy to work with. I don't want to be one of those people who has a reputation as, nobody wants to work with Avery. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by a truck trolley. A truck trolley is a really great product. It's a Michigan-based, Michigan-made product. If you have a truck, you have had this situation. I get my trucks from Garbage Chevy, and they're always Silverados. And in the past, I've had what my son James would jokingly describe as an old man hook. It was a broom handle with a hook on the end that I could reach way up into the front of the bed of my truck, and I could bring out whatever was back there, whether it was hunting or fishing gear or golf clubs or whatever. Well, he used to call it an old man truck until he got a little older, or an old man hook, and he went, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense that we should to use that." Well, these days now, though, I have a truck trolley, which is it's a platform that sits in the truck bed that I can slide out and have access to everything that's there. And if I decide I'm going to need to move gravel or sand or whatever, and I need the entire bed, I just take it out and I put it back in about 5 minutes. This thing is really slick. You got to see it in person or go to the website trucktrolley.com to know what I mean. But really, really great product. And it's one of those things that I use every day. You know, there are certain things I use every day, like my Rapid River knife, I use it every day. My truck trolley I use every day. Check them out online, trucktrolley.com. Oh, so where are we at here? I mentioned at the beginning of this hour how the odds now are starting to get stacked against you. Now, this is just statistically in taking a deer this season. I mean, your best odds of shooting a deer are on the during gun season, are on the opening day of gun season. After that, the odds go down. But I'm thinking about a conversation I had last week, too, with Kevin Vistison of Deer Hunter Podcast. And he said he thinks one of the best times to shoot a buck during the firearm season is right around Thanksgiving. You know, when the action starts to pick up again. Maybe the woods quiet down a little bit. The action starts to pick up again. But one thing you know is you can't shoot a deer unless you're out there. I was out opening week. I was out opening day with the entire family. And then I was out again that Saturday with my grandson, Trent. I haven't seen a buck yet. Trent shot a nice buck. In fact, I haven't seen a deer yet. I've only hunted at this point, as we're in the studio right now, Wednesday, midweek. I've only hunted a day and a half, but haven't seen a deer yet. But, you know, based on what's happened to me in the last few weeks, I'm just happy to be out there. We being Trent and I, are hunting again this weekend. And I'm debating whether to go back to a food plot that I have a nice, comfortable blind over that's been kind of dead lately, to be honest with you, or move to a different spot on the property that we have. I don't know yet. We'll see. You know, wind direction is going to play a big role, right? What direction is the wind going to come from? So we'll play it by ear. I do want to. I really want to shoot a deer with that Brenton 350 Legend. I had a chance to use that Brenton to take my first Michigan bear back at the end of September in the UP hunt with Johnny Bowler, the bear whisperer. And I was very impressed with what that Brenton 350 Legend did. So I really want to shoot a deer with this thing to see what happens. Will I get a chance to shoot a buck with it? That's really what I want. I've got a doe in the freezer now. I got a bear in the freezer now. So we're pretty well set for my little two-person family, as it is these days, on wild game. But I really want to get a chance to shoot a buck with that thing. And if it gets to be the end of the season and I haven't seen a buck, would I shoot a doe? You bet I would shoot a doe if we can find room in the freezer for more wild game. And if not, maybe I donate it to somebody, right? That's always the option. There are always people who need venison, people in your circle, people, friends, people you know from work, people you know from church who like venison and could use some venison. So that's an option as well. But I'm just glad to be out there. I'm glad to be able to rekindle my love for deer hunting. Is the passion there like it used to be? No. But maybe that's just a factor of getting older, right? As you get older, you look at things differently, and maybe you're not as hardcore about our hunting and fishing pursuits. But I don't think that means that we enjoy them any less. In fact, I would argue that I enjoy it more. As I look at hunting and fishing from a different perspective than I did when I was younger, just being out there these days means more. Being out there with my family is the ultimate thrill these days. Fish are just a bonus. Deer are just a bonus. Bear is just a bonus. A turkey's just a bonus. Nice bonus, that's for sure. And if you do end up with something for the table, maybe that's when you bring in wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Which, you know what? We should do that right after the break. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. I am so glad to be here, and I'm so glad to have you along with us as we continue this weekly celebration of this outdoor lifestyle, hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping, and the fruits of those activities, which sometimes, if we're lucky, includes fish or wild game for the table. You know where I'm going with this. When I start talking about wild game, you know I'm talking about wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, truly one of the nicest guys you will ever meet and one of the most talented chefs I have ever met in my life. And I love to wrap up each week's show with the man himself, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. And he is graciously joining us once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for the kind words.
Always a pleasure. David, what do you have for us this week?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I am. Hey, I'm here. I'm here and feeling pretty blessed to be here. So I'm doing great, David.
Good. I know the feeling.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do.
We have a venison steak, Diane, and this is for 4 portions, and it's on page 105 in our cookbook. So you need about 8 ounces of trimmed venison steak per person, a medium onion diced fine, a 12-ounce package of mushrooms sliced thin, a couple of shallots, which is optional. You can use it or not, but it just adds a lot of flavor to this dish. A shallot's kind of like a cross between an onion and a garlic clove. A couple ounces more or less of Worcestershire sauce to your flavor, a couple of pats of butter, a jar of beef gravy, a couple ounces of brandy or bourbon, either one, whatever you prefer, whatever you have, and then a couple cloves of garlic diced fine, olive oil, and flour to dredge the meat in. So what you're going to do, you're going to pound these steaks out between a couple of saran wraps, and you want to make it thinner and more tender. And what it's going to do is keep it from drawing up, because the meat have a tendency, wild game has a tendency to kind of like pucker almost, and draw up. So you want to break them fibers loose. Dredge the meat in flour in a very hot pan with a small amount of oil. Brown it on both sides real fast, and remove the meat while it's very rare. And then in the same pan, you can add the onions, the garlic, the shallots, the mushrooms, and saute with a little bit of maybe more olive oil if you need to. Saute it for just a minute or two, just to kind of break the flavor loose. Return the pan to high heat and flambe with brandy or bourbon away from your stove. And when the flames subside, you can add the Worcestershire sauce and the gravy. And you want to reduce this fast by about half volume to concentrate the flavor. And then take and return the steaks to the pan and cook until the desired tenderness is done. Doneness is ready for you. Probably more rare than anywhere else. It would be the very best. Remove the steaks to your plates, add the butter, mix well, and then spoon, because the butter is going to give it a sheen, and it's going to change the complexity of the dish here, and it's going to give a little flavor to it too, because you taste oil first, and then mix well and spoon it over the steaks. And that's it. It's a fast dish.
Well,
we did this for the show.
I remember that, and I'm going to go back to you. Rare. You always say this, and when you're talking about wild game, especially venison, rare is better. Why is that?
Because it gets dried. There's not a lot of saturated fat in venison meat or elk or any of the big games like that, and so you want to try to eat it as rare as possible to have the most flavor and the tenderness of the meat, and it just does it justice by eating it more rare. Even goose and duck is the same
Goose
thing.
and duck, I know that, but if you talk about something like, say, for example, bear, you got to be careful with bear. Why is that?
Oh man, you want to make sure you can't just throw a bear steak on the barbecue and expect it to come out nice. You got to cook it in a liquid, and it really makes a difference. In almost like a pot roast would be the very best, or a stew for bear would be great.
Well,
or grind it up for
that's
burger.
what we do. Yes, we grind it up for burger because, and in fact, we did the same thing with the doe I shot. Just about all burger, because you can use burger for everything.
Right. You make goulash, you make hamburger out of it. You might have to mix it with a little bit of fatty beef, to hold it together. But other than that, Boy, bear burger must be great.
Bear burger's great. Like goulash or spaghetti or chili or anything. I don't know. It's nice to be able to have that little reminder of that experience after the fact and have it on the table.
Right. I love it.
Yep. All right, David, always a pleasure. We will talk to you next week. You think we're going to do another venison, or what do you think? What direction do you think we're going to head?
Season's in full swing.
Okay, let's do that. Another venison recipe from wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show. As are you. I say this every week, but I mean this sincerely. If you weren't listening to the radio show, if you weren't listening to the podcast version of the show, if you weren't following me on social media, all of this would be for naught. Because if I didn't have an audience, nobody would want to advertise on the show, and if nobody advertised on the show, I couldn't do it. So it all kind of evolves back to you, right? You listening, you following me on social media, following me on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, now called X. You know, it's all part of this thing that's worked out so well for 40 years, and apparently it's going to be around for a couple more years. At least that's interesting. I always say that. I have no plans to retire, but I always say God's plans aren't my plans. Maybe God just told me I can go ahead and work for a few more years. How cool is that?